All right, there isn't a whole lot of DC or DCEU news this week, so I don't have a big update. So I'm going to continue off the series I started last week, kind of do a retrospective on Batman vs. Superman. And we're going to find out what really happened behind the scenes. Let's get started. All right, Batman vs. Superman is where things started to go off the rails because of studio involvement. So in the next couple of episodes where I talk about this movie, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and especially Justice League, you're going to find out that there was a lot of studio interference, and you're going to learn some stuff that you didn't know from behind the scenes. Now, I will tell you that a lot of people really don't like Batman vs. Superman, which is somewhat understandable. It was a financial success, as you'll see by the domestic numbers and also by the overseas numbers. Now, it was not a success, though, with critics, and it was not an overall success with the audience. The audience was kind of a mixed bag. Critics definitely hated this movie, though, and it was very frustrating. I can tell you as a fan going into this movie, I really enjoyed what was there, but I kind of felt like something was a little bit off, and I could understand why critics weren't loving the film. The people that I would go with, I saw this movie 3 or 4 times, and every time I went with people, I had to explain a lot of stuff. Being a huge DC Comics fan, I knew a lot and understood a lot of what was going on, but the audience was kind of confused. Well, that is the fault of the studio. Behind the scenes, Marvel decided that they wanted to make Civil War, which was never the plan. The Russo brothers, who directed Civil War, they said that was never the movie they wanted to make. The studio kind of forced them as a response to Batman vs. Superman. That movie was very well received by both audiences and critics. So what really happened? Well, let's talk about this. Batman vs. Superman was butchered right before it got released. Over a half an hour, anywhere from a half an hour to 45 minutes of footage was cut out of the film after the movie had been completed. It was ready for release, and it got cut. Why? Warner Brothers came to Zack Snyder and said, we need people in the seats. We need to put more bodies in the theater. We need to put more people out there so we can get a better return on investment with this movie. So Zack Snyder was forced to cut his film. But he kind of made an ultimatum with him and said, if you're going to make me cut the film, well, when the movie gets released on video, I want the Ultimate Edition released. They agreed. And if you noticed in the Ultimate Edition, it's actually got a rating. It is rated R for intense sequences. When have you ever seen an extended version of a movie get released on video with a rating? That was the original movie that was supposed to be released in theaters, but Warner Brothers changed it. This is where the downfall comes from. Now, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, why would I want to watch the extended version of Batman vs. Superman if the theatrical version was garbage? Well, because it completely changes the movie. I'm going to mention 3 things that have been changed, and it gives you more context into the film. Now, this is just scratching the surface. If you watch the movie, you're going to see a lot that has been added to the film, and it gives you much more context. First of all, you're going to recognize that Lex Luthor was pulling the strings from day one. Long before this movie ever started, Lex knew who everybody was, and he was pushing all the buttons. So let's talk about major change number 1. In the theatrical version, Superman saves Lois from a terrorist. It looks like it's taking place out, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in Africa. Pushes a guy through the wall. Obviously, that guy's going to die with the kind of force he put on him. Well, they talk about that in some news reports, and we kind of get a sense that people are getting irritated with Superman for taking the law into his own hands. Well, in the Ultimate Edition, you find out it's a lot worse than that. When he left, terrorists, Lex's men, his mercenaries, gathered everybody from the village, shot them dead, and burned them in the middle of the village to make it look like Superman had come in and used his heat vision to just level everything. Yeah, that catches the eye of Batman. So that's one major difference. Let's talk about difference number 2. In the film, one of the things that a lot of people are upset with Superman is we've never been able to see Superman be the happy-go-lucky reporter that he's supposed to be. And this film is no different. In fact, Superman gets really irritated with himself after the guy blows up in Congress. He goes to Lois, says, I couldn't believe I couldn't see this happening. I just wasn't looking. It's all my fault. And he takes off. Well, Lois does some investigating. Goes to the guy's apartment, the chair that had blown up. Went to that guy's apartment, found out he had just bought fresh vegetables, fruits, had groceries, stocked his whole fridge, realized this guy was never going to kill himself. He was set up. So she does some more investigating. Come to find out, the guy's chair had been lined with lead. Superman would have never been able to see the bomb. So that's change number 2. All right, now let's talk about change number 3. The third biggest change that I recognized in this film was the fact that Lex was pulling the strings, and these people were getting killed if they got branded with Batman's symbol when they went into the jail system. Well, Lex was having those men killed. He did it on purpose. So you could see through these events why Batman and Superman would have this, not necessarily a rivalry, but why one would see that the other one was a threat. This was much more prevalent in the Ultimate Edition of this movie. If you have not seen the Ultimate Edition, I highly recommend it. To me, it's one of the greatest superhero films that has ever been released. It is a big difference from the theatrical release. Now, I want to describe why a lot of people have an issue with this movie. There was a dream sequence in the middle of the film. Superman has this horrible vision of being out in the desert. There's an Omega symbol out in the desert, which does indicate Darkseid. For people who aren't familiar with Darkseid, Darkseid is the big bad evil dude in the DC universe. Like, he is the bad guy. He's the equivalent of Thanos, but on a much larger scale. Well, that dream sequence where he saw the Omega symbol and he gets taken down by some parademons, that wasn't a dream. That was a vision of the future. Right after that, you see the Flash come through the timeline and warning Bruce, You were right. Lois is the key. You need to find us. None of that made any sense to anybody. Now, I kind of knew what was going on. Being a DC Comics fan, I got a really good sense of that they were laying the groundwork for something bigger down the line. But audiences were very confused by that. Now, you could tell it's real because everything going on around Bruce is actually physically happening. Papers are floating back down to the ground. There's lots of wind. This is all very much a vision from the future, setting up for a future storyline, which actually comes to a screeching halt when they get into Suicide Squad, the movie that I'm going to talk about next week. Yeah, Suicide Squad had massive studio involvement, and more is coming to light every day, and I'm going to be talking about those things. Then that leads into Wonder Woman, which almost got meddled to a large degree. And then finally Justice League, which was absolutely destroyed by Warner Brothers. So you're going to see in the upcoming episodes why Warner Brothers did what they did. Not necessarily why they did what they did, but I'm going to show you what they did and what the result was. And I'm glad AT&T bought Warner Brothers because they're coming in and fixing a lot of the issues that have gone on. And I'm really hoping we will finally get to see the full version of Suicide Squad eventually. Maybe after Zack Snyder's Justice League cut gets released on HBO Max next year. So this is all an attempt to get everybody caught up on what's been happening behind the scenes and what you can expect with HBO Max and what they're doing with the DC properties. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you will be alerted anytime I put a new video out. No matter what it might be, movie reviews, TV reviews, DC updates, it's all coming your way, and look for some pretty cool things coming up in the future. Thanks.